I never should have taken the shortcut. It was supposed to be a simple road trip, just me, my beat-up sedan, and the open highway. But when my GPS lost signal in the middle of nowhere, I decided to trust the hand-drawn map I found at a gas station. Big mistake. The road was narrow and winding, cutting through dense forest. The trees loomed overhead, their branches clawing at the sky. I told myself it was picturesque, quaint. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest felt less like a scenic route and more like a trap. That's when I saw the lights. They flickered in the distance, warm and inviting. I squinted through the windshield, my heart lifting. A house, maybe even a town. I pressed the gas pedal, eager to find somewhere to rest for the night. The house was old, a sprawling Victorian mansion with peeling paint and a sagging porch. A sign out front read, "Welcome travelers, rest and refresh." I hesitated. Something about the place felt off. But the thought of sleeping in my car was worse. I knocked on the door, and it creaked open on its own. "Hello?" I called, stepping inside. The air was thick with the smell of incense and something metallic I couldn't place. "Is anyone here?" A man appeared in the doorway, tall and gaunt, with hollow cheeks and a too-wide smile. "Welcome," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "We've been expecting you." I frowned. "Expecting me?" "All who wander are led here," he said, gesturing for me to follow. "Come, join us." I should have turned around. I should have run. But curiosity, or maybe exhaustion, got the better of me. I followed him into a grand dining room where a long table was set with an elaborate feast. Roasted meats, fresh bread, steaming vegetables. My stomach growled despite my unease. "Sit," the man said, pulling out a chair for me. "Eat. You must be hungry." I sat down, my eyes darting around the room. The other guests were strange. They sat in silence, their faces pale and expressionless. They didn't touch the food. They just stared at me. I picked up a fork, my hand trembling. The man leaned in, his breath hot on my ear. "Enjoy the meal," he whispered. "It's been prepared, specially for you." I took a bite of the meat. It was rich and savory, unlike anything I'd ever tasted. But as I chewed, I noticed something strange. The texture was wrong. Too fibrous. I looked down at my plate and froze. There was a ring on the meat, a gold band smeared with blood. I dropped the fork, my stomach churning. "What is this?" I demanded, pushing back from the table. The man smiled. "A gift," he said, "from our Lord." "Your Lord?" He gestured to the wall behind me. I turned, my heart pounding. A massive painting hung there, depicting a horned figure surrounded by flames. Satan. I stood up, my chair clattering to the floor. "I need to go." The man's smile widened. "Oh, but you can't leave. You've partaken in the feast. You're one of us now." I backed away, my mind racing. The other guests stood in unison, their eyes fixed on me. I bolted for the door, but it was locked. I turned, my back pressed against the wood as the man approached. "Don't be afraid," he said, pulling a knife from his sleeve. "This is an honor, to be chosen, to be consumed." I screamed and lunged for the window, shattering the glass with my elbow. I climbed through, cutting my arm on the shards, and ran into the forest. The cult followed, their voices chanting in unison. The forest was a labyrinth of shadows and twisted trees. Branches clawed at my face and arms as I ran, their whispers mingling with the chants of the cult. My breath came in ragged gasps, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear my own thoughts. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away. The cult's voices grew louder, closer. I risked a glance over my shoulder and saw them. Dozens of figures in dark robes, their faces hidden beneath hoods. They moved unnaturally fast, their steps silent on the forest floor. I tripped over a root and fell, my knees scraping against the rough ground. Pain shot through my legs, but I forced myself to keep moving. I couldn't stop. Not now. A hand grabbed my ankle and I screamed, kicking wildly. The grip tightened, pulling me back. I clawed at the ground, my fingers digging into the dirt, but it was no use. I was dragged toward the cult, their chants growing louder and more frenzied. "You are chosen," the gaunt man said, his voice echoing through the trees. "You belong to him." I twisted onto my back, kicking at his face. My foot connected with a sickening crunch, and he released me with a howl of pain. I scrambled to my feet and ran, my legs burning with every step. I don't know how long I ran. My vision blurred, and my lungs felt like they were on fire. But then I saw it. A small cabin, its windows glowing with warm light. Hope surged through me, and I stumbled toward it, my legs threatening to give out. I pounded on the door, my voice hoarse from screaming. "Please, help me!" The door opened, and a woman stood there. Her face, lined with age but kind. "Oh dear," she said, pulling me inside. "What happened to you?" I collapsed onto the floor, gasping for breath. "There's a cult. They're after me." The woman's eyes widened. "A cult? Out here?" I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "They tried to kill me. They wanted to eat me." The woman knelt beside me, her hand resting on my shoulder. "You're safe now," she said. "I won't let anything happen to you." I wanted to believe her, but as I looked around the cabin, I noticed something strange. The walls were covered in symbols, pentagrams, inverted crosses, and other signs I didn't recognize. My stomach churned. What are those?" I asked, my voice trembling. The woman smiled. "Protection," she said, "against the darkness." I didn't have time to question her. The door burst open, and the cult flooded in, their chants filling the air. The woman stood, her expression hardening. "You dare enter my home?" she demanded, her voice echoing with power. The gaunt man stepped forward, his face twisted with rage. "She belongs to us," he said. "She has partaken in the feast." The woman's eyes flashed. "She is under my protection now." The cult hesitated, their chants faltering. The gaunt man glared at me, his lips curling into a sneer. "This isn't over," he said. "He will have her." They retreated into the night, their chants fading into the distance. I collapsed onto the floor, my body trembling with exhaustion and fear. The woman helped me to a chair, her hands gentle but firm. "You're safe now," she said, "but you must tell me everything." I did. I told her about the feast, the cult, the painting of Satan. She listened in silence, her expression growing darker with every word. When I finished, she sighed. "You've stumbled into something far older and more dangerous than you can imagine," she said. "That cult has been here for centuries, serving their dark lord. They lured travelers to their feast, offering them as sacrifices." I shuddered. "But why me?" The woman's eyes met mine. "Because you are special," she said. "You have a light within you, a light they want to extinguish." I didn't feel special. I felt terrified. The woman let me stay the night, but I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the cabin, every rustle of the trees outside, made my heart race. I kept expecting the cult to return, to drag me back to that nightmare. When morning came, I thanked the woman and left, determined to put as much distance between myself and that forest as possible. But as I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The nightmares haven't stopped. I see their faces every time I close my eyes, and sometimes, when I'm alone, I hear their voices. It was supposed to be a weekend getaway, a chance to clear my head after a brutal breakup. My friend Claire had suggested it, a remote cabin in the woods, far from the noise of the city. "It'll be peaceful," she said, "just what you need." I should have known something was wrong when she canceled at the last minute. "Something came up," she said, her voice tense. "But you should still go. You need this." I almost didn't go, but the thought of spending another weekend alone in my apartment was too depressing. So I packed my bags, loaded up my car, and drove into the wilderness. The cabin was exactly as Claire had described, rustic, secluded, and surrounded by towering pines. It was charming in a creepy kind of way, with its weathered wood and crooked chimney. I told myself it was cozy, quaint. But as I stepped inside, I felt a chill run down my spine. The air was heavy, almost oppressive, and the walls seemed to close in around me. I shook it off, blaming my overactive imagination. This was exactly what I needed, a break from the chaos of my life. The first night was uneventful. I lit a fire in the fireplace, cooked a simple dinner, and curled up on the couch with a book. The silence was unnerving at first, but I soon grew used to it. It was peaceful, quiet. But then the noises started. It was faint at first, a soft tapping, like fingernails on glass. I told myself it was the wind or a tree branch. But as the night wore on, the tapping grew louder, more insistent. I got up to investigate, my heart pounding. The sound was coming from the window. I pulled back the curtain and froze. There was a face pressed against the glass. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. The face was pale and gaunt, with hollow eyes and a twisted smile. It stared at me for a moment, then vanished into the darkness. I locked the doors and windows, my hands trembling. It was just my imagination, I told myself. Stress, exhaustion, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. The next morning I found a note slipped under the door. The handwriting was elegant, almost calligraphic. "You are cordially invited to join us for dinner tonight. 8 p.m. Follow the path." There was no signature, just a symbol at the bottom, a pentagram surrounded by flames. I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. There was no way I was going to some creepy dinner in the woods. But as the day wore on, curiosity got the better of me. Who had left the note? And why? By evening, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I told myself I'd just take a quick look, see what was out there. I grabbed a flashlight and followed the path into the forest. The path led to a clearing where a large bonfire burned in the center. Around it stood a group of people, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. They were dressed in dark robes, their hoods pulled low over their faces. I hesitated, my heart racing. This was a bad idea, a very bad idea. But before I could turn back, a man stepped forward. He was tall and imposing, with sharp features and piercing eyes. "Welcome," he said, his voice smooth and commanding. "We've been expecting you." I swallowed hard. "Who are you?" "We are the children of the night," he said, "servants of the Dark Lord, and you, my dear, have been chosen." "Chosen for what?" I asked, my voice trembling. He smiled, revealing sharp, yellowed teeth. "To be our offering." I turned to run, but hands grabbed me from behind, dragging me toward the fire. I struggled, kicking and screaming, but it was no use. They were too strong. They tied me to a stone altar, my arms and legs bound with thick ropes. The cult gathered around me, their chants rising into the night. The man, their leader, stood at my feet, a curved dagger in his hand. "Tonight, we offer this soul to our Lord," he said, his voice echoing through the clearing. "May he find her worthy." I screamed, thrashing against the ropes, but they held fast. The leader raised the dagger, his eyes gleaming with malice, and then the ground shook. The cult fell silent, their chants cut short. The air grew heavy, and the fire roared to life, its flames turning black. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and imposing, with horns curling from its head and eyes like burning coals. Satan. The cult fell to their knees, their heads bowed in reverence. The leader stepped forward, his voice trembling with awe. "My lord," he said, "we offer you this soul." The demon's gaze fell on me, and I felt a wave of terror unlike anything I'd ever known. It leaned in close, its breath hot and sulphurous. "Do you wish to live?" it asked, its voice a low growl. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "Please." The demon smiled, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "Then you must make a choice. Join us, or die." I didn't hesitate. "I'll join you." The cult untied me, their faces filled with a mixture of awe and envy. The leader handed me a robe, his eyes gleaming with pride. "Welcome, sister," he said. "You are one of us now." I didn't feel like one of them. I felt like a prisoner. But I played along, biding my time, waiting for a chance to escape. The next few days were a blur of rituals and sacrifices. I watched as they brought others to the clearing, travelers, hikers, anyone unlucky enough to stumble upon their path. I wanted to help them, to warn them, but I couldn't, not without risking my own life. My chance came one night, during a storm. The cult was distracted, their attention focused on the ritual. I slipped away, running into the forest as the rain poured down around me. I didn't stop until I reached the cabin. I grabbed my keys and ran to my car, my heart pounding. But as I turned the key in the ignition, the engine sputtered and died. I tried again, my hands shaking. Nothing. And then I saw them, the cult, emerging from the trees, their faces twisted with rage. I got out of the car and ran, the rain soaking through my clothes. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away. I stumbled into a clearing, my legs giving out beneath me. The cult surrounded me, their chants rising into the night. The leader stepped forward, his dagger gleaming in the moonlight. "You cannot escape," he said. "You belong to him." I closed my eyes, waiting for the end. But it never came. When I opened my eyes, the cult was gone. The clearing was empty, the rain washing away any trace of their presence. I don't know how I got back to the cabin. I don't know how I survived. But I know one thing. I'm not safe. Because sometimes, when I look in the mirror, I see his face staring back at me. And I know he's waiting.